My name is Harry Miller. I'm retired from the Air Force, also was in the Army. Had 22 years in service from Columbus, Ohio originally. Went into the Army when I was 15 years old, 1944. And just in time for the Battle of the Bulge, which will soon be coming up again in 80 years. And doesn't seem possible, but I guess time flies when you're having fun. And I guess I'm having fun because time's sure flying. Yeah, I joined when I was 15. Reason I being, of course, because World War II was on. Everybody wanted to do something during World War II for the war effort. And I'd always wanted to be a soldier all my life. And got the opportunity when somebody told me that they were taking people at 17 and a half. So I had to get my birth certificate, and they didn't have one for me. So I came back and told the recruiter that they didn't have my birth certificate. And I said, I guess that means you can't take me then, can you? He said, yeah, we can take you. He said, you are 17 and a half, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, but beyond doubt. And so they took me, and I ended up in basic training in armor at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And from there I went to Fort Ord, California, and ended up taking some landing vehicle tracked, LVTs they call them, to Europe to give to the British until the Bulge started on the 16th of December, 44. And when it started, we had no tanks. They recommended that we go to the nearest ordnance depot and take anything we wanted. So we thought, oh boy, we're going to get new tanks out of an ordnance depot. So we got there and found out all they had was junk tanks there, ones that had been knocked out and had holes in them and had no radios in them and had no rammer staffs for the main gun. Didn't even have gun sights, main gun for the tank. And the only thing we could find was these beat up tanks. We had to put two tanks together, all we could find, and replace things that were missing. The things that we needed most, like gun sight and radios, we couldn't get. Only two Sherman tanks and one M36 tank destroyer. And with that, they sent the first group that had those already, sent them to the railroad station at the town of Stewmont, Belgium. And when we got there, they met the first three tanks of the 1st SS Panzer Division, which was Adolf Hitler's own. And they had just come from the Normandy massacre. And of course, we knew about that. We had just heard about it. We were furious, finding out that the SS was going to be treating us like that. So we decided to let them do that so we'd get even with them. So what happened was first tank came around the curve and met the first German tank face to face. Our tank fired, knocked the German tank out. Second tank came around the corner and he ran into the second German tank and fired on it and knocked it out. The third tank destroyer came around. They were expecting trouble because they could hear it, what was happening ahead, so they just came around the curve firing, and 3 rounds of 90 millimeter, and they knocked out the third German tank. Well, now they were sitting all over the road, broken up and blocking the road so that the rest of the German 1st Panzer Division couldn't get through. So the Germans turned around and retreated, and they found another road in the Stewmont later on. But boy, we became heroes of the day because in our first half hour with junk tanks, we had stopped the 1st SS Panzer Division, which was something. And we built our reputation real quick that day. So anyway, the Germans came back through town Stewmont, first of all with an infantry fight in the backyard of a home there called a Brown House. And then we found out that they had some 30th Infantry Division people held up in the little hospital in the town of Stewmont. And 1st Division guys got trapped in there and couldn't get out. Every time they tried to get out, well, this German tank was sitting at the end of this long, narrow building, which was the hospital. And what they did, every time the GIs would try to get out of the hospital, the Sherman would fire around down the hall. And it'd scare the devil out of them, so they would stay put. So we tried to knock out this German tank at the end of the building, but couldn't reach him because he was up so high we couldn't raise our weapons high enough to get him. We finally built a corduroy road up the side of this hill that the Hope Hospital sat on. And by 6 o'clock in the morning, we got our first tank up on top. He immediately fired and knocked out that German tank. And then we liberated all the GIs that were in the building, and we happened to go down in the basement of the hospital, and we found something like 92 and so, a little more maybe, old folks and young kids that were being held down there by a Catholic priest to keep quiet so that the Germans wouldn't know they were there. Had the Germans known, they would have machine gunned them all down, because that's what they were famous for. So we liberated those kids and the old folks, and the next thing that happened, our battalion commander set up 3 assault gun tanks that we had. He finally received them, and he was going to demolish the next town of L'église. That's where the 1st SS had holed up again. And fortunately, after Colonel lined up the 3 105 Sherman tanks and started firing, they got a hold of a 155 Long Tom that was trying to escape the war, I guess, and made him come back up and sit next to our 3 assault guns, and they fired into the town of L'église as well. As it happened, the 1st SS ran out of gasoline at that point, and they were getting all their equipment shelled, so they decided they better get out and get going. So they retreated on foot back to Germany and left all the tanks there that they had in the town of L'église. Just left them there, plus a lot of dead German troops. And from there on, well, we took the town, and then we had a lot of other little towns around the area, all the way up to the border, like St. Vith, which was a famous town for that area. And we joined up with the 82nd Airborne on Christmas Day, which was the 25th of December. The 25th of January was when the Battle of the Bulge was declared over. By that time, we had cleaned out every town between where we had started and the German border. The Battle of the Bulge was a terrible time for us because of the cold weather. A lot of us came into line without winter gear on at all. As an example, the 82nd Airborne came in with just their dress uniforms. And in many cases, they didn't have overcoats or even field jackets. In some cases, they didn't even have weapons. So they had to get a fast delivery of what they had available in France when they sent the 82nd and the 101st over to get involved in the Bulge. It was a very, very cold, it was the coldest winter that they had ever kept track of in Belgium that year. And it was very, very difficult for us to maneuver in our tanks. But we did it, and it was a terrible battle. It was something when everybody was cold, everybody was hungry, and nobody slept. And the reason they didn't sleep was because it was too cold to sleep, and if they slept, they were afraid they'd freeze to death. I was 16 years old when the battle had started, and I was never sorry. Don't get me wrong, I was never sorry I did it, and I would do it again, all things being equal. But of course, we'll never be able to have that again, all things being equal. But it was a time when everybody had to do something for the war effort. And I was very happy to be able to do something, and I'm still happy that I was able to do it. Because I think I learned a lot. I grew up fast, and I had to grow up fast.
Well, thank you, Harry.
You bet.